So this is fair and pretty common among the autistic ADHD community. This definitely is like on a spectrum though, because my husband and I are both autistic ADHD, and while I can keep a rhythm, I can clap on the 2s and 4s, my husband cannot. This is all very valid and well and good for us. I have a way harder time giving Taylor this kind of leeway because one, she is according to her own narrative and to the narrative of her fans, a world-class musician. And not only is she a musician, she's a pop girl, a main pop girl. She is currently filling shoes that Britney Spears once filled. And Britney didn't need the narrative that she was like a musical genius or a lyricist or producer or dancer or anything like that. She just went out and did her job, and we all just knew. As a sidebar, Britney's been on my mind a little bit lately, especially because of all that stuff with the DUI that she just had. I hope that eventually she's in a place where she can take care of herself, and whatever situation that she does end up in where she is safe and taken care of, she also still has autonomy over herself and her body. But anyway, back to current main pop girls. Beyonce is a main pop girl as well. And unlike Taylor, Beyonce has to constantly assert her musicianship in a way that Taylor never has. If anything, Beyonce gets derided in a way that Taylor doesn't, because Taylor has the narrative of writing her own music. So when Beyonce's got like 30 writers on one song, people are intentionally obtuse and they're like, oh, of course, like Beyonce doesn't write her own songs. Beyonce's a hack. Be like Taylor. Taylor can write all her own music. Meanwhile, most of the time, all of those writers on one track is because Beyonce's crediting every single person involved in the sample of the beat. She does everything that Taylor does while still being able to count to 8, and she's still derided. There's a lot of like racism and misogynoir when it comes to like discourse around Beyonce's musicianship that Taylor just doesn't have to deal with. And it makes me crazy that like the Swifties are like, oh no, Taylor can't count to 8. She's a genius. I got hella sidetracked. I am so sorry. But to bring it back to your point about like, yes, like there are people who truly cannot keep a beat. It does happen. But at the end of the day, us regular people are not pop stars. We are not setting a narrative that we are like the greatest of all time, the greatest to ever do it. So when Taylor says that shit about, oh, she can only learn according to the lyrics and she can't count to 8, I have to wonder how much of a narrative her being the GOAT is. Counting to 8 isn't just with the dancing, it's with like musicianship and music composition as well, because you think about like music that's on a 4 beat, like a 1, 2, 3, 4 versus like a waltz, it's like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's a lot of math with music that it seems like Taylor doesn't give a shit about. Similarly, Sarah does not give a shit about the math of writing. You would think that there isn't math to writing because you don't necessarily need to know the quadratic formula in order to write, a good smut scene. You don't need it to make good music either, and I think that's why I find the Taylor thing where she can't count to 8 particularly egregious, because she does know how to write poetry, and she does it well. So either she truly cannot count to 8, and I have to question her GOAT status, or this is just part of her quirky every girl narrative, and I'm like, you don't need to do that shit. This honestly brings me to something that I think Taylor and Sarah do. Taylor does it as part of like her narrative, and Sarah does it, she did it during the Call Her Daddy interview. They do this quirky every girl thing where like they want to be relatable. And I have Britney up here because Britney didn't do that. And honestly, neither does Beyonce. And a lot of the main pop girls like Lady Gaga, Rihanna, Ariana Grande, none of them have to do that quirky every girl bullshit. They don't have to pretend to be relatable. They're rich fucking pop stars, and they know it. Britney didn't necessarily need to relate to the lyrics of Oops, I Did It Again. She just needed to stand 10 toes down behind her work. And she did, which is why it doesn't matter that she wasn't like this 2-timing girly, because she didn't have to be. Beyonce and the other main pop girls in her vein, like, Ariana Grande, Rihanna, like those girls, they're also doing their job. They're putting out bangers. Taylor Swift and Sarah J. Maas, they do this shit a little differently. They basically leave their whole lives out in the work and like specifically mining from their lives, and that's part of their narratives and part of their public persona. But at the end of the day, it is also their persona. They're also playing these kind of bullshit games. Someone like Taylor will be lauded for like leaving their whole lives out on the floor and essentially like opening a vein and bleeding out their bangers. Whereas someone like Beyonce, someone like Ariana, they might show us a little glimpse into how they're feeling and like make a little statement with their music, but they also like set boundaries. They don't do that all the time. And then they're kind of lauded as like being fake, putting on a persona. But at the end of the day, being a pop star is a job. It's not a job that you or I have, so we don't necessarily need the ability to count to 8 and learn choreography. We're also not best-selling authors or authors at all. Like I am a writer like by trade, but I don't have any books published. So I, as of now, do not necessarily need the ability to write poetry and to be able to do my prose math to do my job. Whereas someone like Sarah, who is currently sitting at the top of the book talk author food chain, is the apex predator. She does.